Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu shahakol neh b'dvarei.
Amen. Amen.
Hi, everybody. Baruch. Good morning, welcome. Sorry for the delay. Mentioning the snow. It's not snowing anymore, but it hasn't been cleaned yet. There's so much of it. Yeah. So small streets are, of course, the last streets to get cleaned. So,
Oh, we had a good drive here.
right? You drove? No, you took.
Find parking is.
All right.
What do
You
we
said
learn?
your brachas?
I said initial brachas.
Oh, okay.
Up to
Okay,
page
good.
10.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're continuing in our mimer. That Torah is likened to a tree, a fruit tree in particular, that is about pleasure. You learn Torah is the pleasure in the fact that it's God's wisdom. God's wisdom becomes your wisdom. And yes, it is through the intellectual understanding of it. But the pleasure is unique in that even though it's your understanding, but it's the fact that it's God's pleasure, therefore we take pleasure, which is pretty interesting and unique idea. So I translated yesterday that a husband or a wife who has pleasure in the other person's thing, right? Even though it might not be your thing, inherently, shall we say. But it becomes your thing that you have a pleasure in it because it gives them pleasure. Okay. So we explained a little more in King David that he praised the Torah that it is God's song. And what was it that in reference to Torah, the world doesn't exist. There's no world. That a exactingness in the study of Torah, and when you're being precise in something, in the study of Torah, it's making and particularly when it comes to Jewish law, that there's precision in the Torah teachings. There is the world is of non-existence. Just like as we just finished teaching in chapter 25 that the world, what does it mean, one God? Doesn't mean there's one God and we don't believe in many deities. There's the oneness of God. There's only but God. So on the level of Torah, which is one with God, the world is completely nullified. That's as far as Torah is concerned. As far as the person who's commanded to do the mitzvah, so there is a world, right? There is a world that is dependent on you doing the mitzvah to bring life to the world. So we have two things happening at the same time. Right, which is fascinating. Right, on the one hand, from the vantage point of Torah, no world. From the vantage point of you fulfilling a mitzvah, the world is dependent on you. In any case, what we do see is, one thing for sure, is that we're not dependent on any political leader. We're not dependent on any political process. Not to say that you shouldn't necessarily, sometimes you have to go through a political process, but we're not dependent on it. The world and everything is dependent on the mitzvah. And that mitzvah comes from the Torah. That in the Torah, there is no world. There's just God's wisdom, God's will, God's reality. So, as I explained yesterday, what does that mean? And when we're studying Torah, it means your worries don't exist. They don't exist. Afterwards, all of a sudden there's a world, but that worry is dependent on your mitzvah that you do. On one hand, there's, right now, there is no worry. There is no problem. There's just God's wisdom that you are taking in. And then afterwards, there's going to be, when you do doing that there seems to be a world out there. Well, that world and which includes your worry or your thing that you need to deal with. Well, it's totally dependent on your mitzvah. Mitzvah doesn't mean just prayer or a mitzvah could be broadened. The next thing that God needs from you, I mean, generally it's nonsense. Okay. So with that, we can get an idea also how you have pleasure in Torah. Think about it for a moment. I'm just going to tie it in over here. Remember now. Yeah, okay, yeah, I think it might be doing it. But just think about it for a moment, that when you have pleasure in something, right? In the moment of your pleasure, nothing else exists, right? Well, you're sitting on vacation, you're sitting at if this is what gives you pleasure, and you're sitting at the beach, right? And you are, eating your favorite food with your favorite person. Ah, what a pleasure. All your problems at that moment kind of melt away, right? Or potentially do at least, right? So I'm just giving that as a metaphor to appreciate the pleasure in Torah, and that from that pleasure of Torah that, the world doesn't exist. And so the truth is, that vacation and that, that scene is, it's only your pleasure. And therefore, it's not really, it's not going to last. But Torah is God's pleasure. And therefore, you're having pleasure in Him, His pleasure. So then that's real. Now, so in fulfillment of mitzvahs, going back to what King David said, right? That through the mitzvah that we do, and the Alter Rebbe, as he explains it in Tanya, he gives two examples, one of tefillin and one of offerings on the altar. And as we explained, tefillin is up, down, is to draw down Meichen de Gadlus, divine intelligence, to bring that down. Sacrifices on the altar is down, up, right? It's about you bringing yourself up, and that's why the animal on the altar is in the place of the animal soul of the individual, that we're offering that on the altar, our animal soul, towards God, right? So in order that after the drawing down of the details of Torah that are in mitzvahs, that they should reveal themselves in mitzvahs. So this is the idea of the, you need both the halah, which means moving upwards, comes from the word aliyah, right?
Allah.
Hala'ah, right? And hamshacha, to draw down. You need both, which are what we call ratzei v'shoiv, a movement upwards in the soul, and shoiv, a movement of the soul coming back down. Now, and you need both things, right? That's why he gives the example of tefillin and offerings on the altar, because in mitzvahs you need both the movement up and the movement down, right?
So like ruts, run, I don't know.
Ratz means to run, exactly.
So,
And
run
shuv,
forward.
shave, from the word shave, like to sit.
Sure.
Shave, like, settle down,
Mhm.
right? Ratz, get moving.
Taking action or you're just
Don't add to it.
okay.
It's too different. It action is, yes, but I'm not, don't add to it, but it's about a movement,
Mhm.
right? It's a movement up and out of yourself. That's running,
Mhm.
right? Sitting is within yourself, right? That's the idea. So action, the truth is, action might be within yourself to come back down to the earthiness instead of being spiritually high on top of the mountain. So it might be the opposite. It might express itself in the opposite. That's why I say, be careful with that. Explaining it that way.
Okay.
It might be. It can be, yeah. So when you think about it, they're complete opposite movements, right? Either you're in the mode of running for something, you're not settled then, right? You're not settled. You're not grounded, right? Being grounded and running for something, right? So how do you have both? Well, in God's Torah, you can have both. That's where it comes from, right? That's where it comes from. Therefore, we could be commanded, right? Because the mitzvah comes from the Torah. Hope you're seeing the parallels throughout the classes that we're explaining. The mitzvah comes from the Torah because the Torah tells us about the mitzvah, right? So it comes to us to command us that we should be able to sense, right, in our divine service, to have both qualities, which is transcendent of this world because it's not a regular thing. You know, you see, like one person, he's the go-getter, right? He's the go-getter, always striving for something, right? Then you have the other one who's the settled, wise person who's got wisdom, right? Not running. Have the both qualities within yourself is not so simple. Not, it's not that, it's not human. It's transcendent of the human condition. So when we're commanded to do the mitzvah that comes from Torah, right? So we have to feel in us, in ourselves, that the source of that mitzvah comes from the Torah, which is beyond this world, beyond the human condition. Right? That you incorporate both qualities. L'chaim. Oh boy. With transcendent in both, right?
I mean, maybe you're, at times you're running towards the do, and times you're just being, I don't know, you're
Settled,
being settled.
grounded,
Mhm.
right? So to have both qualities, that we're talking about here, both qualities, right? So now the Rebbe says, if you see it, when you do a mitzvah, there, in the blessing of a mitzvah, it's that we have both qualities that are there. What do we say? Asher kirishanu b'mitzvah yisav v'tzivanu. So kirishanu b'mitzvah yisav, sanctified. Sanctified. What does that mean? That's it. That's halal. That's upward. That, in other words, we're beyond this, right? We're beyond the fray, right? We're on top of the mountain, right? We're on top of the mountain. How are we top of the mountain? Because He sanctified us. God sanctified. With this mitzvah, God has sanctified us, right? That's beyond. But then it says vitzivanu, right? Not only God sanctified us, He sanctified us with His sanctity.
Mhm.
Well, that's really beyond this world. That's halah, ilu, right? That's aliyah. That's the movement up, beyond, right? Striving beyond, right? That's why it's not the mitzvah. It's sort of, it doesn't, or not the action. It's not expressed in action, right?
Could action be, I mean, just being, action being just like,
Well, let's just leave it out for now because
Okay.
that's going to confuse things. Let's get what we're teaching instead of something else.
okay.
Okay. But then we say, Asher kidishanu b'mitzvah yisav. He sanctified us with His holiness and raised us up. Hello. Right? Ratzui. With His holiness. But then vitzivanu, then commanded us. Bring it down.
Mhm.
Bring it down would be more, if anything, it would be the action.
Mhm.
Right? Because action is the lowest thing in us. Right? Intelligence is the highest. Emotions, thought, speech, action is the lowest thing. Right? So if anything, action would be, Allah would be, if anything, it's like in your head.
Mhm.
Right? In your head and action. So if anything, it would be, that would be the metaphor better. It'd be the opposite. Right?
So we're not talking about physical action, we're talking about.
No, action obviously is physical. What else is action?
Oh, sorry.
Of course it is.
It is, okay.
Right, it's that. So, but anyways, what we're speaking about over here is to bring out the idea of blessing, of doing a mitzvah, right? When you have a mitzvah to do, you make a blessing, right? A particular mitzvah, right? You're going to put on tefillin now. You're going to say the mitzvah, Asher kidishanu b'mitzvah yisav v'tzivanu. So in those words, you have both ideas there. That's the point over here, right? Asher, that God sanctified us with His sanctity, which means brought us up. and out of this world. And then Vitzivanu. But then he commanded me down here, right now, bring it down, right? And the reason that we say in the mitzvah, which really, what's the point of the mitzvah? For me, to do something, right? So, right? So why would we say Kiddushan b'mitzvah yisaf? Why would we? Tzivanu, yes. Commanded us, yes. What do you mean that he sanctified us with his holiness? Where does that fit in over here? What's the point of that? Because that's not the end game over here in the mitzvah. The end game of the mitzvah is, hey, just do it, right? Do the mitzvah. So where does the Asher Kiddishanu come? You follow the question? Is that clear?
Okay.
That even after we've been commanded to do the mitzvah, they're still God's commandments. They are still something that are holy and sanctified and removed from the one who's commanded. Me, you. It's right. It's beyond us. All right. Amazing. Thank you, folks. We will see you soon.
Thank you, Rabbi.
A long Chumash and Rashi